The letter arrived on the day. Olivia Anderson decided she was worth less than the dust beneath her shoes. She stood in the narrow hallway of her aunt's house in Denver, Colorado, holding the telegram that informed her of her father's death with hands that had long ago stopped trembling at bad news. March of 1878 had brought nothing but cold winds and colder truths. Her father, a gambler who had abandoned her to her aunt's care 15 years ago, had left her nothing but debts and a name that made shopkeepers in town whisper behind their hands. Her aunt, Margaret, had made it abundantly clear that morning that Olivia's usefulness had run its course. "You are 23 years old and plain as a post," Margaret had said over breakfast, not even bothering to look up from her tea. "No man in Denver will marry you, not with your father's reputation hanging around your neck like a millstone. I have done my Christian duty these past years, but I cannot afford to keep feeding a mouth that brings nothing to this household." Olivia had not argued. What argument could she make? She had no dowry, no prospects, no particular beauty to recommend her. Her brown hair hung limp and lifeless, her gray eyes held no sparkle, and her dresses were all hand-me-downs that fit poorly. She had spent her years in her aunt's house trying to be useful, trying to be invisible, trying to be anything that might justify the space she took up in the world. She had failed. That afternoon, she packed her single carpet bag with her few belongings and walked out of her aunt's house without saying goodbye. Margaret was at her church social, probably already telling her friends that the ungrateful niece had finally left. Olivia had $17 to her name, money she had saved from doing mending work for neighbors who paid her in pennies and pity. She walked to the train station with no destination in mind, just the bone-deep certainty that staying in Denver meant slowly disappearing until even she forgot she existed. The man at the ticket counter looked at her with the bland indifference she had come to expect from the world. "Where to, miss?" Olivia's eyes scanned the board behind him. Her money would not take her far. "What can I reach with $12? He barely glanced at her. "Shafter down in Texas, mining town in the mountains, train leaves in an hour." Texas, mountains. A place where no one knew her father's name or her aunt's disappointment. "One ticket, please." The journey south took 3 days, each mile carrying her further from everything she had known. The train car was crowded with miners, cowboys, and families heading west with hope shining in their eyes. Olivia sat by the window and watched the landscape change, feeling nothing. Hope was for people who believed they deserved good things. She had given up on that particular fantasy years ago. Shafter, Texas sat nestled in the Chinati Mountains, a rough collection of buildings that had sprung up around silver mines. When Olivia stepped off the train on a dusty afternoon in late March, the first thing she noticed was the wind. It blew hot and dry, carrying the scent of mesquite and minerals. The second thing she noticed was that this was a town of men. Miners, mostly, with sun-weathered faces and bodies bent from hard labor. The few women she saw looked tired and worn, their eyes holding the same weariness she felt in her bones. She found a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Chen, a stern-faced woman who looked Olivia up and down with sharp eyes. "I need someone to help with the cooking and cleaning, Mrs. Chen said. "Room and board plus $2 a week. You work hard, you can stay. You cause trouble, you are out. Understood?" "Yes, madam, I understand." "You running from something?" "No, madam, just running to something different." Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly. "That I understand." "You start tomorrow morning, 4 o'clock. The miners eat early." Olivia's room was barely large enough for a narrow bed and a washstand, but it was hers. That night, she lay in the darkness and listened to the unfamiliar sounds of Shafter settling around her. Somewhere, men were singing. Somewhere, a dog barked. Somewhere, life continued with its messy, chaotic vigor. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine a future where she mattered, where she was more than a burden to be tolerated. The image would not come. The work at the boarding house was hard. Mrs. Chen ran a tight operation, feeding 20 miners 3 meals a day. Olivia rose before dawn to help prepare breakfast, spent her days washing linens and scrubbing floors, and fell into bed each night too exhausted to dream. The miners were rough men, but most were respectful enough. They ate their meals in grateful silence and left coins on the table for Mrs. Chen's excellent cooking. Weeks passed into months. Spring gave way to the brutal heat of a Texas summer. Olivia learned the rhythms of Shafter, the way the town emptied during the day when the men went into the mines and came alive at night when they emerged, dusty and desperate for distraction. She learned which miners were kind and which to avoid. She learned to make biscuits the way Mrs. Chen insisted, to get stains out of work shirts, to move through the world taking up as little space as possible. She made no friends. The other women in town were busy with their own survival, and Olivia had long ago forgotten how to reach out to another person. She existed in a gray space, neither happy nor particularly unhappy, just going through the motions of living without any real expectation that things would change. Then, one morning in July, Lucas Foster walked into the boarding house dining room and everything shifted. Olivia was serving breakfast, moving between the tables with a pot of coffee and a practiced efficiency. She heard Mrs. Chen's voice from the kitchen doorway, louder than usual. "Lucas Foster, you have not been down from that mountain in 6 months. You sit down and eat properly." Olivia turned and nearly dropped the coffee pot. The man standing in the doorway had to duck his head to clear the frame. He was massive, well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they seemed to fill the entire space. His hair was dark brown and fell past his shoulders, tied back with a leather cord. His face was tanned and weathered, with a strong jaw shadowed by several days' worth of beard. But it was his eyes that caught Olivia's attention. They were a startling blue, like the sky at dawn, and they held an intelligence and gentleness that seemed at odds with his intimidating size. He wore buckskin pants and a shirt that stretched across a chest and arms so heavily muscled that Olivia could see the definition even through the fabric. His hands were enormous, scarred and calloused from hard work. Everything about him spoke of strength, of survival, of a man who had carved out his existence through sheer force of will. "Mrs. Chen, you know I prefer my own cooking," he said, and his voice was deep and quiet with a hint of humor. "Your own cooking is terrible and you know it. Sit." Lucas's mouth quirked up in what might have been a smile, and he moved into the room with a grace that surprised Olivia. For such a large man, he moved with careful precision, as though always aware of his own strength. His eyes swept the room, cataloging the other miners who had stopped eating to stare at him, and then landed on Olivia. She froze. His gaze was not invasive or demanding, but it was direct. He looked at her the way one might look at another human being, with simple acknowledgement of her existence. It had been so long since someone had looked at her that way that Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Morning, madam," he said, nodding to her. "Good morning," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. He took a seat at the end of one table, folding his large frame onto the bench. "Mrs. Chen bustled out of the kitchen with a plate piled high with eggs, bacon, and biscuits, setting it in front of him with a satisfied nod. "You eat all of that. You are too thin." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Mrs. Chen, I am not thin. For you, you are too thin. Eat." Olivia tried to focus on refilling coffee cups, but she found her eyes drifting back to the mountain man. He ate with steady, unhurried bites, his manners surprisingly refined for someone who lived alone on a mountain. One of the miners, a loudmouth named Jack who had drunk too much the night before, leaned over. "Foster, heard you killed a bear with your bare hands last winter. That true?" Lucas did not look up from his plate. "No. Heard you got a cabin up in the high country that is impossible to find." "It is not impossible, just remote." "Why do you live up there all alone? You hiding from something?" Now Lucas did look up and his blue eyes had gone cold. "I live where I prefer to live. That a problem for you, Jack?" Jack swallowed and looked away. "No problem, just curious." The room fell silent. Lucas returned to his meal and gradually the other miners resumed their conversations. Olivia brought the coffee pot to his table, her hands steady despite the flutter in her chest. "More coffee, sir." He glanced up at her and again she was struck by the gentleness in his eyes. "Please. And it is just Lucas, not sir." She poured, acutely aware of how her worn dress hung on her thin frame, of how her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, of all the ways she was unremarkable. "Thank you, Lucas." "You are new here," he said, and it was not a question. "I have been here since March, nearly 4 months now. What is your name?" "Olivia Anderson." "It is nice to meet you, Olivia Anderson." He said it with a simple sincerity that made something in her chest ache. When was the last time someone had been genuinely pleased to meet her? "You, as well," she said, and then hurried away before she could embarrass herself by saying something foolish. Lucas finished his meal and spoke quietly with Mrs. Chen for a few minutes before leaving. Olivia watched from the kitchen window as he walked down the dusty street toward the general store, his long strides eating up the distance. Men moved out of his way, some out of respect, others out of wariness. "That is a good man," Mrs. Chen said from beside her, making Olivia jump. "Lucas Foster came to these mountains 5 years ago. He traps, hunts, sells furs and meat in town. Never causes trouble. Keeps to himself. Some people think he is dangerous because he is so big and so quiet, but I know better. He helped my son when Thomas got lost hunting 2 winters ago. Found him and carried him 10 miles through a snowstorm. Saved his life. He seems very kind," Olivia said carefully. Mrs. Chen gave her a sharp look. "He is kind. He is also alone. Some men choose to be alone because they are running from something. Lucas chooses it because people down here are too noisy and complicated for his liking. But every person needs connection, even mountain men who pretend they do not." Olivia was not sure what to say to that, so she said nothing. She returned to her work, scrubbing dishes and trying not to think about blue eyes and gentle voices. Lucas did not come back to the boarding house for 2 weeks. Olivia told herself she was not disappointed, that it did not matter, that a man like that would have no reason to notice a woman like her. But she found herself looking up every time the door opened, hoping, when he finally returned, it was late afternoon. Olivia was in the yard behind the boarding house, taking down laundry from the line. The sun was merciless, beating down on her head and shoulders. She had been working since before dawn and exhaustion made her movements clumsy. She reached for a sheet and felt the world tilt sideways, her vision graying at the edges. Strong hands caught her before she hit the ground. Olivia blinked, disoriented, and found herself looking up at Lucas's concerned face. He had lifted her as though she weighed nothing, one arm behind her shoulders and the other under her knees. "When did you last eat?" he asked, his voice quiet but firm. This morning, I had some bread." "It is 4 in the afternoon, Mrs. Chen." He raised his voice without shouting, and somehow it carried. Mrs. Chen appeared in the back door, her eyes widening. "What happened?" She nearly fainted. "When did she last have a real meal?" Mrs. Chen's expression shifted to one of guilt and frustration. "She works too much." I tell her to eat more, but she says she is not hungry. She needs to eat now. Lucas carried Olivia toward the house, moving with that same careful grace. She wanted to protest, to tell him she was fine, but her head was spinning and his arms felt so solid and safe that she could not quite make herself speak. He set her down gently in a chair in the kitchen, then turned to Mrs. Chen. "Food, please, Mrs." Chen was already moving, pulling out leftover stew and bread. Lucas crouched down so he was at eye level with Olivia, his big hands resting on his knees. "You need to take better care of yourself." "I am fine," she said automatically. "You are not fine. You are working yourself into the ground." There was no judgment in his voice, only concern. "Why?" The question was so direct, so honest that Olivia found herself answering before she could think better of it. "Because I need to be useful. I need to justify my existence here." Something shifted in Lucas's expression. "Olivia, you do not need to justify existing. You just need to exist." The words hit her like a physical blow. She stared at him, this massive, quiet man who looked at her as though she were a person of value, and felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. "I do not think you understand how the world works for women like me. Maybe I do not. But I understand what it is like to feel you have to prove your worth every single day, and I understand that it is exhausting and it is a lie." He stood as Mrs. Chen set a bowl of stew in front of Olivia. "Eat. All of it. I am going to talk to Mrs. Chen about your work schedule." He walked out into the hallway with Mrs. Chen, and Olivia could hear their low voices but not the words. She picked up the spoon with shaking hands and began to eat. The stew was rich and warm, and she realized she was hungrier than she had admitted to herself. She had been skipping meals, telling herself that she did not need much, that Mrs. Chen needed to stretch the food budget. But the truth was darker than that. Some part of her believed she did not deserve to eat, did not deserve to take up space, did not deserve basic care and comfort. Lucas returned as she was finishing the stew. He had a glass of water in his hand, which he set in front of her. "Drink." She drank, and he sat down across from her, watching with those steady blue eyes. "Mrs. Chen is going to hire another girl to help. You are going to work fewer hours and eat 3 meals a day. This is not negotiable." "I cannot afford to lose wages," Olivia protested. "You are not losing wages. You are keeping the same pay for reasonable hours." Mrs. Chen agreed. "Why would you do this? You do not even know me." Lucas was quiet for a long moment, his hands folded on the table in front of him. "I know what it is like to feel worthless. I know what it is like to think the world would be better off without you in it. And I know that sometimes one person noticing, one person caring can make the difference between surviving and not surviving." He met her eyes. "I am noticing, Olivia. And I am telling you that you have value whether you believe it right now or not." Tears spilled over before she could stop them. She wiped them away roughly, embarrassed and overwhelmed. "I am sorry. I do not mean to be emotional. You do not need to apologize for having feelings." He stood, moving to the counter and returning with a clean cloth which he handed to her. "I have to head back up the mountain, but I will be back in town in a few days. Promise me you will eat properly." "I promise," she whispered. "Good." He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his stern features into something warm and approachable. "Take care of yourself, Olivia Anderson. You matter more than you know." He left, and Olivia sat in the kitchen as the light shifted toward evening, holding the cloth he had given her and trying to understand what had just happened. A man who barely knew her had seen her worth when she could not see it herself. He had intervened, had insisted she be treated better, had spoken to her with respect and kindness. It was such a small thing, really, but to Olivia it felt like the sun breaking through after years of clouds. Mrs. Chen came back into the kitchen, her expression softer than usual. "Lucas is right. I have been working you too hard. I see it, but I think you want to work hard, so I let you. But this is not good. You need rest. You need food. Starting tomorrow, you work morning shift only, 6 to noon. The new girl Rosa will do afternoons and evenings. Mrs. Chen, I truly cannot afford to lose wages." "You are not losing wages. Lucas is paying the difference." Olivia's eyes widened. "What? No, I cannot accept that. I barely know him," he insisted. "He said that you were clearly not taking care of yourself, and that if I did not reduce your hours, he would stop coming to the boarding house, and I would lose his business." Mrs. Chen shook her head, a small smile playing at her lips. "Lucas never comes to the boarding house anyway, so this is not much of a threat, but I understand what he is doing. He is giving you space to breathe. Let him." Olivia wanted to protest further, but exhaustion and emotion had drained her reserves. "I do not understand why he cares." "Some people care because they have good hearts. Lucas is one of those people. He does not show it often because he lives alone on a mountain, but when he sees someone struggling, he helps. This is just who he is." Mrs. Chen patted Olivia's shoulder awkwardly. "Now go rest. Tomorrow is a new day and you will start fresh." That night, Olivia lay in her narrow bed and thought about Lucas Foster. She thought about his hands, so large and scarred, catching her before she fell. She thought about his voice, deep and calm, telling her she did not need to justify her existence. She thought about the way he had looked at her, truly looked at her, and seen a person worth helping. It was terrifying and wonderful all at once. The next morning, Olivia woke at her usual 4 o'clock, then remembered she did not start until 6. The luxury of 2 extra hours felt almost sinful. She lay in bed and watched the darkness outside her window slowly lighten, listening to the sounds of the town stirring to life. When she finally rose and dressed, she felt more rested than she had in months. Rosa arrived at the boarding house just as Olivia was finishing the breakfast service. She was a cheerful girl of 19 with dark eyes and a ready smile. "You must be Olivia. Mrs. Chen told me all about you. I am so excited to work here. My mother says Mrs. Chen runs the best boarding house in Shafter." Olivia found herself smiling back, Rosa's energy infectious. "She does. The work is hard, but Mrs. Chen is fair. I do not mind hard work. My family has a farm outside town and farm work is brutal. This will be easier, I think." Rosa looked around the dining room with interest. "Mrs. Chen said you would train me for a few days. I am a quick learner, I promise." Over the next few days, Olivia taught Rosa the routines of the boarding house. The younger girl was indeed a quick learner, and her cheerful chatter filled the spaces that Olivia's silence usually occupied. Rosa talked about her family, about the young man who was courting her, about her dreams of one day opening her own restaurant. She asked Olivia questions too, genuine questions that showed real interest, and slowly, carefully, Olivia began to answer. "How did you end up in Shafter?" Rosa asked one morning as they folded linens together. "I needed a change. I was living with my aunt in Denver, but it was not working out." "Do you like it here?" Olivia considered the question. Did she like Shafter? The town was rough and dusty, the work was hard, and she had no real friends, but she had freedom here in a way she had never had in Denver. She was earning her own money, making her own choices, surviving on her own terms. "I think I do," she said, surprising herself. "It is not easy, but it is mine." Rosa nodded sagely. "That is important. My mother always says that a hard life you choose is better than an easy life someone else chooses for you." Your mother sounds wise. She is. You should meet her. She would like you. The offer was casual, but it made Olivia's chest tighten with emotion. When was the last time someone had wanted her to meet their family? When was the last time someone had thought their mother would like her? I would like that, she said quietly. Good. Next Sunday, you should come for dinner. We always have too much food anyway, and my mother loves feeding people. Olivia agreed, and when Sunday came, she found herself walking out to the Santos farm with Rosa. The land was dry and rocky, but the Santos family had coaxed life from it through sheer determination. Rosa's mother, Elena, was a round woman with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands. She greeted Olivia with a warm embrace that startled her. Any friend of Rosa's is welcome here. Come, come, you are too thin. We will fix that. The Santos family consisted of Elena, her husband Miguel, Rosa, and 3 younger brothers. The house was small and crowded, but filled with laughter and warmth. They ate at a long table, passing bowls of beans and rice and fresh tortillas, and Olivia felt something inside her begin to thaw. This was what a family looked like. This was what belonging felt like. After dinner, as Olivia helped wash dishes, Elena spoke quietly. Rosa tells me you work very hard, too hard maybe. I do not work as much anymore. My hours were reduced recently. This is good. A young woman needs time for living, not just working. Elena gave her a meaningful look. Rosa also tells me that Lucas Foster arranged for your hours to be reduced. Olivia felt her cheeks heat. He did. I am not sure why. He barely knows me. Elena smiled. Lucas is a good man, quiet but good. My Miguel went hunting with him once years ago. Miguel said that Lucas is the kind of man who notices things, who sees what others miss. If he noticed you needed help, it is because he was paying attention. I am not sure what to think about that, Olivia admitted. Think that maybe someone sees value in you, even if you do not see it yourself yet. Elena patted her hand. Give yourself time, Mija. You are young. You have been hurt, but life can still surprise you. Olivia carried those words with her as July gave way to August. Her new schedule gave her afternoons free, and she began to explore Shafter properly. The town was small, just a main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, and a few other buildings. But the surrounding landscape was beautiful in its harsh way. The Chinati Mountains rose around the town, their peaks sharp against the endless blue sky. Olivia began taking walks in the cooler evening hours, following the paths that led out into the scrubland. She saw Lucas from a distance sometimes, his tall figure unmistakable even at a distance. He would come into town to sell furs and meet at the general store, to pick up supplies, to check in with Mrs. Chen. He always nodded to Olivia when he saw her, always asked how she was doing, but he did not linger. It was as though he had appointed himself her guardian angel, but did not want to intrude on her space. Olivia found herself thinking about him more than she should. She remembered the way his arms had felt when he caught her, strong and steady. She remembered the way he had looked at her with respect and concern. She remembered his words, "You do not need to justify existing. You just need to exist." She wanted to believe that. She was trying to believe that. One evening in mid-August, Olivia was walking along a trail that led toward the foothills when she heard voices raised in anger. She slowed, caution prickling along her spine. Around a bend in the path, she saw 3 men surrounding a 4th. The 4th man was on the ground, his face bloodied. The 3 standing men were miners she recognized from the boarding house, drunk and mean. "You cheated," one of them shouted, kicking the man on the ground. "You took our money." "I did not cheat," the man gasped. "I won fair." "Liar." Olivia knew she should leave, should get help, should do anything but intervene. But the memory of feeling helpless, of being at the mercy of people who saw her as worthless, made her step forward. "Stop it. Leave him alone." The 3 men turned to look at her, and their expressions made her regret her impulse immediately. "Well, look at this," one of them said, leering. "Little Olivia from the boarding house. What are you doing out here all alone? I am walking. You need to stop hurting that man, or what?" "You will tell Mrs. Chen." The man laughed, taking a step toward her. "Maybe you should mind your own business, girl." Olivia's heart was pounding, but she held her ground. "If you hurt him more, you will be arrested. Sheriff Morton does not tolerate that." "Sheriff Morton is not here, is he?" The man was close now, too close, and Olivia could smell the whiskey on his breath. She took a step back and then another. The man grinned, enjoying her fear. He reached out to grab her arm. "I would not do that if I were you." The voice was quiet, but it cut through the evening air like a blade. All four men froze. Olivia turned and felt relief flood through her. Lucas stood a few yards away, and his face was calm, but his eyes were cold as winter. He looked at the man who had been reaching for Olivia, and his voice dropped even lower. "Step away from her, now." The man tried to bluster. "This is not your business, Foster. You made it my business when you threatened her. Step away." There was something in Lucas's tone that promised violence, and the drunk miner was just sober enough to recognize it. He stepped back, his hands raised. "We were just having some fun." "Fun." Lucas's gaze swept over the injured man on the ground, then back to the three standing miners. "Pick him up. Take him to the doctor. Pay for his treatment. Then get out of my sight before I forget I am trying to be civilized. You cannot tell us what to do." Lucas moved then, closing the distance between them in 3 long strides. He was so much bigger than the other men that his sheer physical presence was intimidating. "You can walk away right now, or I can make you wish you had. Choose quickly." The men chose wisely. They hauled their injured victim to his feet and half dragged, half carried him back toward town, muttering curses but not daring to look back. Lucas watched until they were out of sight, then turned to Olivia. The coldness left his eyes, replaced by concern. "Are you hurt?" "No, thank you. I do not know what would have happened if you had not come along. You should not be out here alone in the evening. It is not safe." His voice was gentle despite the words. "I know. I was not thinking. I just wanted to walk, to have some space." She looked up at him, this man who kept appearing when she needed him most. "Do you follow me?" A hint of a smile touched his mouth. "Not exactly. I was hunting in the hills and saw you walking this way. I was keeping an eye out, but I was not following, I promise. Why do you keep helping me?" Lucas was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching her face. "Because I can. Because you deserve help. Because I see myself in you, Olivia. I see someone who has been told they are not enough, who has internalized that message, who is trying to survive in a world that does not seem to have space for them. And I want you to know that you are wrong. You are enough. You are more than enough." Tears stung Olivia's eyes again. This man, this quiet mountain man who barely knew her, kept saying the exact things she needed to hear. "I do not know how to believe that." "Then let me believe it for you until you can believe it yourself." He held out his hand. "Come on, I will walk you back to town. It is getting dark." Olivia placed her hand in his, and his fingers closed around hers, warm and calloused and strong. They walked together in comfortable silence as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Olivia felt something shift inside her, some long frozen part of her heart beginning to thaw. This man, this gentle giant, was showing her what kindness looked like, what respect looked like, what it meant to be seen as a person of worth. When they reached the boarding house, Lucas released her hand reluctantly. "Promise me you will be careful. Shafter is a good town overall, but there are dangerous men here, especially when they have been drinking." "I promise. And Lucas, thank you for everything. For seeing me when I felt invisible." His smile was soft. "You were never invisible, Olivia. You just needed someone to tell you to look up." He left, disappearing into the gathering darkness, and Olivia stood on the porch and watched him go. Something had changed tonight. Something was changing in her. She was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had value after all. The next few weeks brought a tentative routine. Olivia worked her morning shifts, spent time with Rosa, and occasionally joined the Santos family for Sunday dinner. She was eating better, sleeping better, and slowly starting to feel more like a person and less like a ghost. She even bought herself a new dress, a simple blue cotton that actually fit her properly. When she looked in the mirror, she was surprised to see that her face had filled out slightly, that her eyes held a spark that had been absent for years. Lucas came to town more frequently, though Olivia suspected it was not because he suddenly needed more supplies. He would stop by the boarding house for a meal, would make a point to speak with her to ask how she was doing. His questions were never intrusive, but they were genuine. He listened when she spoke, remembered details from previous conversations, and made her feel as though her words mattered. One day in early September, he arrived at the boarding house with a small bundle wrapped in brown paper. He found Olivia in the kitchen, where she was helping Mrs. Chen prepare the evening meal. "I have something for you," he said, looking almost shy. Olivia wiped her hands on her apron and took the bundle, curious. When she unwrapped it, she found a book. The leather cover was worn but well cared for, and when she opened it, she saw it was a collection of poems by Walt Whitman. "How did you know I like to read?" she asked, touched beyond words. "You mentioned it once, weeks ago. You said you used to read before you moved to Shafter, but that you could not afford books anymore. I had this in my cabin. I thought you might enjoy it." Olivia ran her fingers over the pages, her throat tight with emotion. "This is too much. I cannot accept this." "It is a book, Olivia. I am not giving you the crown jewels. I want you to have it." He paused. "Besides, I have already read it a dozen times. I know most of the poems by heart. It will be good for the book to have a new reader." She looked up at him, this man who kept giving her pieces of kindness like they were nothing, like she deserved them. "Thank you. This means more than you know." "I do know," he said quietly. "That is why I gave it to you." After he left, Olivia held the book close to her chest and tried not to cry. No one had ever given her such a thoughtful gift. No one had ever paid enough attention to remember what she liked. She felt herself falling slowly and inevitably for Lucas Foster. It was terrifying. She had no experience with love, no reason to believe that a man like him could ever want a woman like her. But the heart does not always listen to reason. That night, she sat in her small room and read by candlelight, losing herself in Whitman's words. One poem in particular caught her attention, and she read it over and over until she had it memorized. "I celebrate myself, and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. Every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you." The idea that she was made of the same essential material as everyone else, that she had inherent worth simply by existing, was revolutionary. It was what Lucas had been trying to tell her all along. September brought cooler temperatures and the first hints of autumn. The mountains shifted from brown to gold as the scrub grass dried out. Olivia continued to gain strength, both physical and emotional. She was laughing more, talking more, engaging with the world around her. Rosa declared that Olivia was coming out of her shell, and even Mrs. Chen commented that Olivia seemed happier, but there was a restlessness growing in Olivia too. She was grateful for her life in Shafter, for the safety and stability she had found, but she wanted more. She wanted to know if the feelings she had for Lucas were one-sided or if he felt something too. She wanted to understand this quiet man who lived alone on a mountain, but who showed up exactly when she needed him. One Saturday afternoon, she made a decision. She packed a small basket with food from the boarding house kitchen, told Mrs. Chen she was going for a long walk and set out toward the mountains. She knew approximately where Lucas's cabin was, high in the foothills. Several people in town had mentioned it over the months. She was not sure she could find it, but she had to try. The trail was steep and rocky, and Olivia was breathing hard by the time she reached the higher elevations. The landscape up here was different, more rugged and wild. Juniper and pinyon pine clung to the slopes, and the air smelled of resin and earth. She walked for over an hour, following a narrow path that seemed to lead deeper into the wilderness. Just when she was about to give up, she saw it. A cabin nestled in a small clearing, built from rough-hewn logs and surrounded by towering pines. Smoke curled from the chimney, and a stack of firewood stood neatly beside the door. It was small and simple, but it looked solid and well-maintained. Olivia's courage nearly failed her. What was she doing here? What if Lucas did not want visitors? What if she was making a terrible mistake? But she had come this far, and she refused to turn back now. She walked up to the door and knocked. There was a moment of silence, and then the door opened. Lucas stood there, his eyes widening in surprise. He was wearing just his buckskin pants, his chest and feet bare, and Olivia tried very hard not to stare. His torso was a map of muscle and scars, his shoulders impossibly broad, his arms corded with strength. He looked like something out of a legend, a figure carved from the mountain itself. "Olivia, what are you doing here? Are you all right?" "I am fine. I wanted to see you, to talk to you. I brought food." She held up the basket like an offering. Lucas looked at her for a long moment, and then he stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in." The interior of the cabin was sparse but comfortable. There was a fireplace with a pot hanging over the flames, a rough-hewn table and 2 chairs, a bed in one corner with furs piled on it, and shelves lined with books and supplies. It was clean and organized, the space of a man who valued order. "This is lovely," Olivia said, looking around. "It is so peaceful up here." "It is. That is why I like it." Lucas pulled on a shirt, much to Olivia's secret disappointment, and gestured to the table. "Sit, please. Can I get you some water?" "Yes, thank you." He poured water from a pitcher into a tin cup and handed it to her, then sat down across the table. His expression was curious but guarded. "Olivia, why are you really here? That is a long walk from town." She took a breath, gathering her courage. "I needed to see you. I needed to understand why you keep helping me, why you care. I have told you why. You have told me that you see yourself in me, that you know what it is like to feel worthless. But you have not told me your story, Lucas. You have not told me why a man like you lives alone on a mountain, why you avoid people, why you seem to carry sadness in your eyes even when you smile." Lucas was quiet for a long time. His big hands rested on the table, and Olivia could see the scars that crisscrossed his knuckles, the calluses that spoke of hard work. Finally, he spoke. "You are right. You have trusted me with your pain, and I have not returned that trust. That is not fair. You do not have to tell me anything you do not want to." "No, I want to. I think I need to." He stood and walked to the fireplace, staring into the flames. "I came to Texas 5 years ago from Missouri. I was running, just like you were running from Denver. I was running from a woman I loved and from a mistake I could not undo." Olivia's heart clenched, but she stayed quiet, letting him talk. "Her name was Catherine. We grew up together, and I loved her from the time I was 15 years old. When I was 21, I asked her to marry me. She said yes. We were planning a life together, a farm, children, everything. And then one night her brother got into trouble. He owed money to dangerous men, and they came to collect. I was there at their house when it happened. There was a fight. I am strong, Olivia. I have always been strong. And in the chaos, I hurt one of those men badly. I did not mean to kill him, but I did. He hit his head when he fell and he died." Olivia's breath caught, but she did not interrupt. "I was arrested. There was a trial. Eventually, I was acquitted because it was self-defense, because I was protecting Catherine and her family. But the damage was done. Catherine looked at me differently after that. She was afraid of me. She said she could not marry a man who had killed someone, even if it was an accident. She broke our engagement, and I understood. I could see the fear in her eyes when she looked at me, and I could not bear it." He turned to face Olivia, and his eyes were haunted. "So I left. I came to Texas, to these mountains, and I built this cabin. I decided that if people were going to fear me, I might as well live alone where I could not hurt anyone. I have been here ever since, trapping and hunting and trying to convince myself that I am better off without people." "But you are not better off," Olivia said softly. "You are lonely." "I am. I thought I could handle it, thought I preferred solitude, and for a long time I did. But then I saw you, this woman who was working herself to death because she thought she had no value, and I saw myself. I saw someone who had been told by the world that they were not enough. And I could not stand by and watch you disappear." He crossed back to the table and sat down, leaning forward. "You asked why I keep helping you. It is because helping you helps me. It reminds me that I am not the monster Catherine thought I was, that I can be gentle, that I can be kind, that I can matter to someone." Tears were streaming down Olivia's face now. She reached across the table and took his hands in hers. His hands were so much larger than hers, rough and scarred, but they were warm and steady. "Lucas, you are not a monster. You are the kindest man I have ever met. You protected Catherine's family. You have protected me. You see people who are struggling and you help them. That is not the behavior of a monster. That is the behavior of a hero. I do not feel like a hero." "Neither do I, but we are going to have to start seeing ourselves the way we see each other." She squeezed his hands. "You have shown me my worth in 1,000 quiet ways. Every time you made sure I ate, every time you reduced my hours, every time you walked me home or gave me a book or simply spoke to me with respect, you were telling me that I mattered. Let me do the same for you. Let me tell you that you matter, that you are good, that you deserve love and connection and happiness." Lucas's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Olivia, I do not know if I can be what you need. I do not need you to be anything other than yourself. I am falling in love with you, Lucas Foster. With the man who lives in this cabin and reads poetry and catches me when I faint and makes sure I am safe. I do not care about your past or the mistakes you think you have made. I care about who you are right now in this moment." He stared at her, and for a second she thought she had gone too far, revealed too much. But then he stood, pulling her up with him, and wrapped his arms around her. Olivia melted into his embrace, her head against his chest, his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her ear. His arms were so solid, so safe, and she felt tears of relief and joy soak into his shirt. "I am falling in love with you too," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I have been fighting it because I was afraid. Afraid you would look at me the way Catherine did. Afraid I would hurt you. Afraid I did not deserve someone as brave and beautiful as you." "I am not brave or beautiful," Olivia protested. He pulled back just enough to look down at her, one hand coming up to cup her face. His palm was rough against her cheek, but his touch was infinitely gentle. "You are both. You left everything you knew to start over alone in a rough mining town. You work hard every day to build a life for yourself. You stood up to drunk miners to protect a stranger. You climbed a mountain to find me because you wanted to understand me. If that is not bravery, I do not know what is. And you are beautiful, Olivia. Maybe not in the way society values, but in the way that matters. You are beautiful because you are kind and resilient and full of quiet strength. She could not speak, so she did the only thing she could think of. She stood on her toes and kissed him. Lucas went very still for a heartbeat, and then he was kissing her back, his arms tightening around her. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, two wounded people learning to trust. But then it deepened, became something more, and Olivia felt herself falling into it, into him, into the realization that she was loved, that she was wanted, that she was enough. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight. Not for anything improper, just stay. Let me cook you dinner and show you the stars from up here. Let me spend time with you without the rush of town and work and the world intruding." "I would like that," Olivia said. They spent the evening together, and it was one of the happiest times of Olivia's life. Lucas cooked a simple meal of venison stew and biscuits, and they ate by the fire, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his childhood in Missouri, about learning to hunt and trap from his father. She told him about her mother, who had died when Olivia was young, and her father, who had abandoned her for a life of gambling and bad decisions. They talked about books they had read, places they wanted to see, dreams they had thought they lost. As darkness fell completely, Lucas led her outside. The night sky above the mountains was a blanket of stars, more stars than Olivia had ever seen in her life. They sat on a bench outside the cabin, and Lucas pointed out constellations, his deep voice narrating the myths behind their names. "My father used to tell me the stars were proof that we are all connected," Lucas said. "That the same light that touches the mountains touches the oceans and the plains. That no one is truly alone because we all live under the same sky. That is beautiful. I forgot it for a while. When I first came here, I did not look at the stars. I was too busy hiding from myself. But you have reminded me, Olivia. You have reminded me that connection is what makes us human." She leaned her head against his shoulder, and his arm came around her, pulling her close. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, and Olivia felt peace settle into her bones. This was what she had been searching for without knowing it. Not perfection, not wealth or status or conventional beauty. Just this: acceptance, understanding, love. Lucas made her a bed of furs near the fire, and he slept on the other side of the cabin, respecting her boundaries even as they navigated this new territory between them. In the morning, he made coffee and fried eggs, and they ate breakfast as the sun rose over the mountains, painting everything gold. "I should get back to town," Olivia said reluctantly. "Mrs. Chen will worry. I will walk you down." Lucas paused. "Olivia, what do we do now? I do not want to lose you, but I also do not know how to balance my life up here with a relationship." "We figure it out together," Olivia said. "Maybe you come to town more often. Maybe I come up here when I can. Maybe we court properly like normal people and see where this goes." "I do not need you to have all the answers right now, Lucas. I just need you to want to try." "I want to try," he said immediately. "I want to try so much it scares me. Me too." The walk back to Shafter took them over an hour, but Olivia did not mind. She and Lucas held hands the entire way, and every so often he would point out tracks in the dirt or tell her about the plants they passed. He was teaching her to see the mountain the way he did, full of life and beauty and secrets. When they reached the edge of town, Lucas stopped. "People are going to talk when they see us together. The strange mountain man and the quiet girl from the boarding house. Are you prepared for that? Let them talk. I have spent my whole life worrying what people think of me. I am done with that. If being with you means gossip, then I will gladly be the subject of every rumor in Shafter." Lucas's smile was radiant. He kissed her forehead, a gesture of tenderness that made her heart flutter. "I will see you soon. Take care of yourself. You too." He watched until she was safely back at the boarding house before turning to head to the general store. Olivia walked inside with a smile on her face that she could not seem to suppress. Mrs. Chen took one look at her and raised an eyebrow. "You were gone all night." "I was at Lucas's cabin." "We talked. Nothing inappropriate happened, I promise." "I believe you. Lucas Foster is many things, but he is not dishonorable." Mrs. Chen studied her. "You look different, happy." "I am happy. For the first time in years, I am genuinely happy. Good. Happiness looks good on you." Word did spread, of course. In a town as small as Shafter, news traveled fast. Olivia heard the whispers when she walked through town, saw the speculative looks from miners and shopkeepers. But instead of shrinking from the attention as she once would have, she held her head high. Let them talk. She had nothing to be ashamed of. Rosa was thrilled. "Lucas Foster, Olivia, that is so romantic. The hermit mountain man and the girl who needed to find herself. You are like characters in a story." "It does not feel like a story. It feels real and terrifying and wonderful all at once." "That is how love is supposed to feel, I think. My mother says that real love is not easy or comfortable. It is challenging and scary because it requires you to be vulnerable, but it is worth it." Olivia thought about Lucas's face when he had told her about Catherine, about the vulnerability it took to share that pain. Your mother is right. Lucas came to town 3 times a week now, a dramatic increase from his previous sporadic visits. He would have breakfast or dinner at the boarding house, always making a point to sit where he could see Olivia, always asking her about her day. After her shift, they would walk together, exploring the area around Shafter or simply sitting in the shade of the church and talking. He courted her properly, with a sweetness that surprised everyone who thought they knew the gruff mountain man. He brought her wildflowers from the high country, their blooms hardy and beautiful. He carved her a small wooden bird, delicate and detailed, which she kept on the shelf beside her bed. He listened when she talked, his full attention on her, making her feel like the most important person in the world. Olivia felt herself blossoming under his attention. She was no longer the gray, invisible woman who had arrived in Shafter months ago. She wore the new dress with pride, arranged her hair in a softer style, and smiled at people she passed on the street. She was learning to take up space in the world, to believe that she deserved good things. One evening in October, Lucas took her to a spot he called the Overlook, a flat rock outcropping that provided a stunning view of the valley below. They sat together as the sun set, his arm around her shoulders, her head against his chest. "Olivia, I need to ask you something," Lucas said, his voice serious, her heart skipped. "What is it? I know we have only been courting for a few weeks, but I feel like I have known you much longer. You have changed my life, made me believe in connection again, made me want to be part of the world." He shifted so he could look at her directly. "I want you to marry me. I know it is fast, and I know I cannot offer you a life of luxury or comfort. I live in a cabin on a mountain. I trap animals for a living, but I can offer you safety and respect and a love that will not waver. I can offer you a partnership where you are valued for exactly who you are." Tears filled Olivia's eyes, but they were tears of joy. "Lucas, you are offering me everything I have ever wanted. I do not need luxury or comfort. I need exactly what you are giving me: respect, love, acceptance. Yes, I will marry you. Yes, 1,000 times yes." He pulled her into a fierce embrace, and when he kissed her, it was full of promise and hope. They stayed on the Overlook until the stars came out, making plans for their future. They were married in November in the small church in Shafter. The ceremony was simple, with Mrs. Chen, Rosa and her family, and a handful of townspeople in attendance. Olivia wore a dress that Alina Santos had made for her, a beautiful cream-colored gown with delicate embroidery. Lucas wore clean buckskin and a shirt that actually fit him properly, his long hair tied back neatly. When he saw Olivia walking toward him, his eyes shone with tears. The pastor, a kind older man named Reverend Hayes, spoke about love and partnership. "Marriage is not just about finding someone to share your life with," he said. "It is about finding someone who makes you want to be better, who sees your worth when you cannot see it yourself, who walks beside you through both joy and hardship. Lucas and Olivia, you have found that in each other. Cherish it." When Lucas slipped a simple gold band onto Olivia's finger, his voice was steady. "I promise to honor you, to protect you, to remind you every day that you are valuable and loved. I promise to be your partner in all things, to listen to you, to support your dreams. I promise to love you for all of my days." Olivia's voice was thick with emotion. "I promise to love you without fear, to see you as you truly are and not as the world has tried to define you. I promise to be your safe haven, your companion, your partner in building a life full of meaning and joy. I promise to remind you of your goodness whenever you forget it." They kissed as husband and wife, and the small gathering erupted in cheers. At the celebration afterward at the boarding house, Mrs. Chen had prepared a feast, and there was music and laughter. Olivia danced with Lucas, his strong arms guiding her, and she felt like she was floating. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Foster?" Lucas murmured against her ear, like the luckiest woman alive. "The feeling is mutual." They spent their wedding night in a room at the boarding house that Mrs. Chen had decorated with wildflowers. Lucas was gentle and patient, making sure Olivia felt safe and cherished. They took their time learning each other, and when they finally came together, it was with tenderness and awe. Afterward, lying wrapped in his arms, Olivia felt complete in a way she had never imagined possible. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too, more than I can ever express." Lucas pressed a kiss to her hair. "You have given me my life back, Olivia. You have reminded me what it means to be human, to connect, to love. I will spend the rest of my life showing you what that means to me." The next day, they moved to Lucas's cabin. Olivia was not worried about leaving the boarding house or the town. She had friends now, connections that would not fade just because she lived in the mountains. And more importantly, she had Lucas and a life they would build together. The cabin became their sanctuary. Lucas taught Olivia how to hunt and trap, how to read animal tracks and predict weather patterns. She proved to be a quick learner, her natural intelligence and determination serving her well. In turn, she brought organization and warmth to the cabin, sewing curtains for the windows, arranging their books, planting a small garden near the door that would bloom in spring. They fell into an easy routine. Lucas would check his trap lines while Olivia tended to the cabin and the garden plans. In the evenings, they would cook together, eat by the fire, and read to each other from their growing collection of books. They talked about everything, sharing thoughts and dreams and fears. Olivia learned that Lucas loved poetry and music, that he had a dry sense of humor, that he cried during particularly beautiful sunsets. Lucas learned that Olivia was clever and resourceful, that she had a gift for growing things, that she sang while she worked. They made love often, learning the contours of each other's bodies, discovering what brought pleasure and joy. Lucas was always attentive, always making sure Olivia felt wanted and beautiful. He would trace the lines of her body with his big hands and tell her she was perfect, and slowly, she began to believe it. Winter came to the Chinati Mountains, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. The cabin was snug and warm, and Olivia discovered that she loved the isolation. There were no expectations up here, no judgments, just the two of them and the endless sky. They would sit by the fire on long winter evenings, wrapped in furs, and Olivia would think about how far she had come from that desperate woman who had arrived in Shafter believing she was worthless. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas asked one night, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "How different my life is now. How a year ago I thought I had nothing to offer the world, and now I am sitting here with you, feeling more valuable than I ever dreamed possible." "You were always valuable, Olivia. You just needed someone to help you see it. You did more than help me see it. You showed me, in 1,000 quiet ways, that I mattered. Every kindness, every gesture, every time you looked at me like I was important, you were rebuilding something inside me that had been broken for so long." Lucas pulled her closer. "We rebuilt each other. You showed me that I was not a monster, that I deserved love and connection. You gave me permission to be gentle again, to care again. We saved each other. I like that. It feels true." In January, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She told Lucas one evening after dinner, nervous about how he would react. They had not talked about children yet, had been too focused on building their partnership. His face went through a series of emotions: surprise, joy, fear, wonder. "A baby. We are going to have a baby." "Yes." "Are you happy about it?" "Happy, Olivia. I am terrified and thrilled and overwhelmed. I am going to be a father. I never thought I would have this, a family of my own." He knelt in front of her, his hands on her still flat stomach. "We are going to be good parents. We are going to make sure our child knows they are loved and valued from the very first day." "We are," Olivia agreed, her own tears flowing. "We are going to give them everything we did not have." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Lucas was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly making sure Olivia was comfortable and rested. She tolerated his hovering with good humor, understanding that it came from love. They made trips to town more frequently now, seeing the doctor and purchasing supplies for the baby. Rosa and Alina Santos were overjoyed at the news and immediately began sewing baby clothes. Mrs. Chen knitted blankets, her stern face softening every time she looked at Olivia's growing belly. The community of Shafter, which had once seemed so indifferent, now rallied around them, offering advice and support. As spring arrived and the mountains burst into bloom, Olivia felt her own body blooming. She was round and heavy, but Lucas made her feel beautiful. He would place his hands on her belly and talk to the baby, telling stories and making promises about the adventures they would have. Their son was born on a warm day in August, just as the afternoon sun was beginning to slant through the cabin windows. The birth was long and difficult, but Lucas stayed by Olivia's side the entire time, holding her hand and encouraging her. When the baby finally arrived, wailing lustily, Lucas cut the cord with shaking hands and placed their son on Olivia's chest. "He is perfect," Olivia whispered, staring down at the tiny red face. "He is absolutely perfect. He is, just like his mother." Lucas kissed her forehead, his eyes bright with tears. "You did so well. You are incredible." They named him Theodore after Lucas's father and called him Theo. He was a healthy baby with a good appetite and his father's blue eyes. Lucas was besotted from the first moment, constantly holding Theo and marveling at his tiny fingers and toes. Olivia watched her husband become a father and fell in love with him all over again. The first year of Theo's life was exhausting and wonderful. Olivia and Lucas learned to navigate parenthood together, taking turns with night feedings, marveling at every milestone. Theo was a happy baby, quick to smile, and he transformed the cabin from a quiet sanctuary into a home full of laughter and chaos. As Theo grew into a curious toddler, Lucas taught him about the mountains, taking him on short walks and pointing out animal tracks. Olivia taught him songs and read him stories from their growing library. They were building a life full of love and purpose, exactly the life they had both dreamed of, but never thought they would have. 2 years after Theo was born, Olivia gave birth to a daughter they named Clara. She had Olivia's gray eyes and Lucas's dark hair, and she was calm and observant from the start. Their family was complete, and the cabin rang with the sounds of childhood. Laughter, arguments, questions, discoveries. Lucas expanded the cabin, adding a second room for the children. He built furniture with his own hands, beds and chairs, and a large table where they could all eat together. Olivia planted a bigger garden, teaching the children to tend the vegetables and care for growing things. They made frequent trips to town, maintaining their friendships with the Santos family and Mrs. Chen. Rosa had married her young man and had children of her own, and the kids played together while the adults caught up. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters and lean times, illnesses and injuries. But Olivia and Lucas faced every challenge as a team, supporting each other through difficulties and celebrating victories together. They had built a partnership based on mutual respect and love, and it sustained them through everything. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Lucas took Olivia back to the overlook where he had proposed. They left the children with the Santos family for the evening and hiked up to the familiar spot. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and they sat together on the rock where their life together had truly begun. 10 years, Lucas said, his arm around her shoulders. 10 years since you walked into my life and changed everything. 10 years since you showed me I had value, Olivia replied. Since you taught me to believe in myself. We have built something beautiful, have we not? A family, a home, a life full of meaning. We have, and it is more than I ever dreamed possible. Olivia turned to look at him. His hair was graying at the temples now, and lines had appeared around his eyes, but he was still the strong, gentle man she had fallen in love with. Do you ever regret leaving your solitary life? Do you ever miss the quiet? Never. Not for a single moment. You and the children are the best things that ever happened to me. You gave me a reason to come down from the mountain, a reason to engage with the world. You gave me purpose. He kissed her, soft and sweet. I love you, Olivia Foster. I love the life we have built. I love the woman you have become, so strong and confident and full of joy. I love you too. You saved me, Lucas. You showed me I was worthy of love and respect. You taught me to value myself. And then you loved me so completely that I learned to love myself too. They watched the sun disappear behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. In the valley below, the lights of Shafter began to twinkle. Somewhere down there, their children were laughing with friends. Somewhere, life continued in its beautiful, messy way. But up here, in this moment, it was just the two of them. Two people who had been broken and lost, who had found each other and built something whole. Two people who had learned that worth was not something you had to earn, but something you inherently possessed. Two people who had discovered that love, real love, saw you at your worst and chose you anyway. As stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Lucas and Olivia made their way back down the mountain, hand in hand. They had a family waiting for them, a home full of warmth and laughter. They had friends and community and purpose. They had everything they needed, but most importantly, they had each other, and that made all the difference. Years continued to pass in the Chinati Mountains. Theo grew into a thoughtful boy who loved the wilderness as much as his father did, while Clara became a voracious reader who devoured every book she could get her hands on. The cabin on the mountain became known throughout Shafter as a place of warmth and welcome, where anyone in need could find a meal and a listening ear. Olivia's garden flourished, producing vegetables that she shared with neighbors in town. She began teaching other women how to garden in the harsh mountain soil, passing on the knowledge she had gained. Lucas continued his trapping and hunting, but he also began guiding hunting parties for wealthy visitors from back east, earning enough money to provide comfortably for his family. Mrs. Chen retired from running the boarding house, passing it on to Rosa and her husband. She spent her final years as a beloved grandmother figure to Theo and Clara, telling them stories about the early days of Shafter and teaching them to appreciate hard work and kindness. When she passed peacefully in her sleep at the age of 78, the entire town mourned. Olivia never forgot the darkness she had emerged from. She recognized the signs in others now: the slumped shoulders, the averted eyes, the quiet desperation of someone who believed they had no value. When she saw it, she reached out. She would invite them for dinner, listen to their stories, help them find work or housing. She paid forward the kindness Lucas had shown her, helping others find their own worth. One day, a young woman arrived in Shafter much as Olivia had years before, alone, afraid, with nothing but a carpetbag and despair in her eyes. Olivia saw her standing by the general store, looking lost, and approached her without hesitation. "I am Olivia Foster. You look like you could use a friend." The young woman's eyes filled with tears. "I do not want to be a burden." "You are not a burden. You are a person who needs help, and I am a person who can offer it. Come with me. Let me introduce you to some people who can help you get settled." As Olivia walked the young woman toward Rosa's boarding house, she caught sight of Lucas emerging from the general store. He was older now, his hair more gray than brown, but his shoulders were still broad and his eyes still held that gentle strength. He saw what Olivia was doing and smiled, a small, proud smile that told her he understood. She was paying it forward. She was being for someone else what Lucas had been for her. She was showing another lost soul that they had value, that they mattered, that their story did not end in despair. That evening, back at the cabin with her family around her, Olivia reflected on the journey she had taken. From that hollow, desperate woman who had arrived in Shafter believing she was worthless, to this confident, loving person surrounded by family and purpose. The transformation had not happened overnight. It had been built slowly, through 1,000 small moments of kindness and love. Lucas caught her eye across the table and raised his glass of water in a small toast. She understood what he was saying without words. "We made it. We built this together. We are happy." She raised her own glass in return, her heart full to bursting. The years ahead would bring their own challenges and joys. Theo would eventually marry a kind young woman from town and start his own family. Clara would become a teacher, educating the children of Shafter and surrounding areas. Lucas and Olivia would grow old together in their mountain cabin, their love deepening with each passing year. But on that evening, with their children laughing over dinner and the fire crackling warmly, Olivia felt complete. She had learned the most important lesson of her life. That worth was not something external, not something granted by others or earned through suffering. Worth was inherent, essential, unchangeable. Every person possessed it simply by existing. Lucas had shown her that truth in 1,000 quiet ways, through gentle words and patient actions, through seeing her when she was invisible and valuing her when she felt worthless. And in doing so, he had not only saved her life but given her a reason to live it fully. As the children cleared the table and Lucas stoked the fire for the night, Olivia stood by the window and looked out at the mountains she had come to love. The same mountains where she had once climbed desperately seeking answers, where Lucas had carved out his solitary existence, where they had built their family and their future. The mountains were unchanged, eternal and solid, but she was transformed completely. And that transformation, that journey from worthlessness to value, from despair to joy, from isolation to love, was the greatest gift she had ever received. She felt Lucas's arms come around her from behind, his chin resting on top of her head. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, as he had asked 1,000 times before. "How grateful I am, for you, for our life, for every moment that brought me to this place. The feeling is entirely mutual." He tightened his embrace. "I love you, Olivia, today, tomorrow, always. I love you too." And in that simple exchange, in the warmth of his arms and the comfort of their home, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she was valuable, she was loved, and she was exactly where she was meant to be. The girl who had thought she had no worth had discovered that she was precious beyond measure, not because of anything she had done or any role she had filled, but simply because she was herself. And that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.